There is a plant that Native American elders ate every single day. The Navajo called it a gift from the Earth Mother. The Cherokee carried seeds with them during the Trail of Tears because they knew survival depended on it. Colonizers who documented encounters with elderly tribal members reported something that seemed impossible. Men and women who lived past 100 years old, strong, alert, working until their final days. Their secret was not hidden. It grew everywhere, in every field, along every river, around every settlement. This plant contains more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, more protein than lettuce by a factor of 3. It provides all essential amino acids. It was one of the most cultivated crops in North America for over 4,000 years. Then European agriculture declared it worthless. The United States Department of Agriculture classified it as a noxious weed. Bayer, Syngenta, and BASF developed herbicides specifically to eradicate it. Today, farmers spend millions annually trying to poison it out of existence. They failed. It keeps coming back. It always has. This is Lamb's Quarters, Chenopodium album, the crop that built nations, erased by the people who destroyed them. Welcome to Recession Roots. Before we dig deeper, if uncovering what corporations tried to poison out of existence matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every video preserves the food they wanted you to forget. The story begins in approximately 2000 BC along the river valleys of eastern North America. Long before corn arrived from Mexico. Long before Europeans knew this continent existed. Indigenous peoples of the eastern woodlands were cultivating a group of crops that archaeologists now call the Eastern Agricultural Complex. At its center was Chenopodium, Lamb's Quarters. Seeds recovered from Riverton site in Illinois date to 1950 BC. That is 4,000 years ago. These were not wild seeds. Archaeologist Bruce Smith of the Smithsonian Institution analyzed them in 1984 and found clear signs of domestication. The seed coats were thinner than wild varieties. The seeds were larger. These plants had been deliberately bred for generations, possibly for centuries. By 500 BC, Lamb's Quarters had spread across the entire Mississippi River Valley. The Hopewell culture, famous for their massive earthwork mounds, cultivated it as a primary food source. When archaeologists excavated Hopewell sites in Ohio, they found storage pits filled with Chenopodium seeds. Not hundreds, thousands, enough to feed entire communities through winter. The ancestral Puebloans grew it in the southwest. The Iroquois Confederacy cultivated it in the northeast. The Pawnee, the Omaha, the Lakota, the Cherokee, the Choctaw. Every major Native American civilization from the Mississippi to the Atlantic relied on this plant. It was not a weed to them, it was a staple crop. It was security, it was life. Early European explorers documented what they saw. In 1612, Captain John Smith wrote about the Powhatan people cultivating fields of unfamiliar crops that grew faster and more abundantly than anything in England. He did not understand what he was seeing. These were not the crops Europe knew. They were better. French missionaries in the 1700s recorded encounters with Iroquois elders who had seen 100 winters. They described these men and women as physically strong, mentally sharp, and spiritually vital. The missionaries attributed this to divine providence. They did not consider diet. They did not examine what these elders actually ate. Archaeological record tells us, isotopic analysis of skeletal remains from pre-contact Native American sites shows a diet rich in Chenopodium. It was eaten every day. It was dried for winter storage. It was ground into flour. It was boiled into porridge. It was everywhere. Then, colonization happened and everything changed. European settlers brought their own crops, wheat, barley, oats, crops that required plowing, fertilizing, and constant maintenance, crops that Europeans understood and could control. They looked at Lamb's Quarters and saw something growing where they did not plant it. They called it a weed. They pulled it, they burned it. They replaced 4,000 years of agricultural knowledge with crops that needed to be purchased, processed, and protected. By 1800, lamb's quarters had been almost completely erased from American agriculture. The forced-out relocations of native peoples destroyed the oral traditions that preserved cultivation knowledge. The Trail of Tears did not just displace the Cherokee, it severed the connection between a people and the plants that had sustained them for millennia. The plant survived. It grew along roadsides, in abandoned fields, in the margins where no one bothered to look. It became invisible, just another weed. Then the Dust Bowl came. In 1934, the worst drought in American history turned the Great Plains into a wasteland. Crops failed across 14 states, wheat fields became deserts, cattle starved. Over 3.5 million people abandoned their farms and fled. Those who stayed faced starvation. But in Oklahoma and Kansas, in the hardest hit regions, some families survived on a plant their grandmothers remembered. They called it wild spinach, pigweed, goosefoot, different names for the same salvation. Lamb's Quarters, the Federal Writers Project, a Depression-era government program, collected oral histories from survivors. A woman from Cimarron County, Oklahoma, described gathering lamb's quarters from the fields that no longer grew anything else. She said the weeds saved her children when the wheat died. Another account from Liberal, Kansas, described families specifically seeking out lamb's quarters because it grew without rain, without care, without any help at all. The plant that settlers had dismissed for 2 centuries kept their descendants alive when industrial agriculture collapsed, and science would eventually prove what Native Americans knew all along. In 1998, researchers at the University of Nebraska published a comprehensive nutritional analysis of Chenopodium album. The findings should have changed everything. 100 grams of lamb's quarters leaves contain 4.2 grams of protein compared to 1.3 grams in iceberg lettuce. They contain 309 milligrams of calcium, nearly 3 times more than milk per calorie. They contain 1.2 milligrams of iron, 40% more than spinach. They provide over 200% of daily vitamin A needs, over 100% of vitamin C. The protein is not incomplete. Unlike most plant sources, lamb's quarters contains all 9 essential amino acids in significant quantities. This is extraordinarily rare in the plant kingdom. Quinoa has this property, amaranth has it, lamb's quarters has it, and lamb's quarters grows for free in every temperate climate on Earth. In 2015, a study published in the Journal of Food Science and Technology analyzed the antioxidant capacity of lamb's quarters compared to commercial vegetables. Lamb's quarters scored higher than broccoli, higher than cabbage, higher than most cultivated greens sold in grocery stores. The leaves contain beta-carotene, lutein, and zeaxanthin, compounds linked to reduced cancer risk and improved eye health. But here is where lamb's quarters becomes biologically impossible. Dr. Garrison Wilkes, Professor Emeritus of Biology at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, spent decades studying the genetics of Chenopodium. What he found challenged fundamental assumptions about plant evolution. Lamb's quarters is what geneticists call an alhexaploid. It has 6 complete sets of chromosomes, double what most plants possess. This genetic redundancy gives it extraordinary adaptability. When Wilkes exposed lamb's quarters to drought conditions that killed standard crops within 2 weeks, the lamb's quarters survived. When he grew it in saline soil that commercial vegetables refused to germinate, lamb's quarters thrived. When he tested its response to temperature extremes, he found it tolerating ranges from below freezing to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. He called it one of the most resilient food plants on Earth. He said its survival capacity borders on the indestructible. Every seed produces a plant that can generate over 75,000 seeds in a single season. Those seeds remain viable in soil for up to 40 years. You can bury lamb's quarters seeds, wait 4 decades, disturb the soil, and watch them grow. The plant exists in a state of permanent readiness, waiting for the conditions that will eventually come. This is why industrial agriculture cannot tolerate it. A plant that produces free food, requires no irrigation, survives drought, thrives in poor soil, provides complete protein, and reseeds itself forever is an existential threat to the modern agricultural economy. You cannot patent lamb's quarters. Monsanto tried to develop herbicide-resistant Chenopodium strains to sell as a commercial crop in the 1990s. The project failed because wild lamb's quarters kept cross-pollinating with the commercial varieties. Nature refused to be controlled. You cannot sell seeds for a plant that produces 75,000 seeds per generation. You cannot sell fertilizer for a plant that grows in marginal soil without inputs. You cannot sell irrigation systems for a plant that survives drought. You cannot sell anything to someone who grows lamb's quarters because lamb's quarters does not need anything you are selling. So they classified it as a noxious weed. The USDA published technical bulletins on lamb's quarters eradication beginning in the 1940s. Extension offices across America distributed guides on killing it. Herbicide manufacturers developed products specifically targeting broadleaf weeds like Chenopodium. Atrazine, metribuzine, and glyphosate all list lamb's quarters as a target species. Global herbicide market reached $40 billion in 2023. A significant portion of that revenue comes from products designed to kill plants that humans ate for 4,000 years. And while Americans spend billions poisoning their free food, the rest of the world never forgot. In India, lamb's quarters is called bhatia. It appears in traditional dishes across northern India and Pakistan. Markets sell it openly. Families cultivate it deliberately. It is considered a winter delicacy, prized for its mild spinach-like flavor and nutritional density. In Mexico, the related species Chenopodium berlandieri, called huazontle, has been continuously cultivated since Aztec times. It is battered and fried, served with salsa, eaten during Lent when meat is forbidden. Pre-Columbian people knew its value. Their descendants still know. In Greece, wild Chenopodium is gathered in spring and cooked with olive oil and lemon. In China, it has been eaten for thousands of years. Half the world treats lamb's quarters as food. The other half was taught to spray it with poison. When the next recession hits, when food prices rise beyond what families can afford, lamb's quarters will still be there. When aquifers run dry and irrigation becomes too expensive, lamb's quarters will still produce food on rainwater alone. When climate change makes traditional agriculture increasingly unreliable, lamb's quarters will do what it has done for 4,000 years. It will grow, it will spread, it will feed whoever is smart enough to recognize it. Learn to identify it. The leaves are shaped like a goose's foot, diamond to triangular, with shallow-toothed edges. The undersides have a distinctive white powdery coating that rubs off on your fingers. The stems are grooved and often striped with red or purple. The plant grows upright, reaching 3 to 5 feet tall by late summer. It looks like spinach's wild cousin, because that is essentially what it is. Harvest the young leaves and tender growing tips before the plant flowers. The flavor is mild, earthy, similar to spinach, but slightly more mineral. Eat it raw in salads. Saute it with garlic and olive oil. Add it to soups, stews, and stir-fries. Steam it and serve with butter. Dry the leaves for winter storage. Collect the seeds in fall and grind them into flour for bread and porridge, exactly as Native Americans did for 4,000 years. The Cherokee carried these seeds during the Trail of Tears, when the American government forced them from their ancestral lands, when soldiers marched them 1,000 miles in winter. When 4,000 people died along the way, the survivors carried lamb's quarters seeds because they knew what waited on the other side would be hostile. They knew they would need food that did not depend on anyone's permission to grow. Those seeds were an act of resistance. They were a refusal to be fully broken. They were faith that the plant, which had sustained their ancestors, would sustain their descendants. That faith was not misplaced. Lamb's quarters still grows on Cherokee land. It still grows on Navajo land. It still grows on the land of every tribe that was displaced, dispossessed, and nearly destroyed. The people who tried to erase Native Americans also tried to erase their food. Both survived. Every person who learns to recognize lamb's quarters breaks the cycle. Every garden where it is harvested instead of poisoned is a small act of remembrance. Every meal made from this plant connects you to 4,000 years of human survival, to the Native American civilizations that understood what we forgot, to the Dust Bowl families who stayed alive when the economy collapsed around them. We did not lose lamb's quarters. The knowledge was taken. The plants were poisoned. The history was buried. But the seeds remained. They always remain. Waiting in the soil for 40 years if necessary, waiting for someone to remember. The plant that Native Americans cultivated for millennia is still here, still free, still growing in every neglected corner of this continent, still offering complete protein, abundant calcium, and survival that cannot be bought, sold, or controlled. If this root revealed something for you, subscribe to Recession Roots and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to poison out of existence. The next root breaks ground soon.